Connected Consumer.
Hi, I'm Rosey Sera, and I'm one of the hosts of Parks Associates podcast, The Connected Consumer. Unfortunately, our beloved host, Chris White, is not joining us in today's episode, but feel free to reach him on Twitter at CWhiteInsights to tell him that you missed him. If you're new here, welcome. This podcast is all about Parks Associates data-driven market insights on emerging consumer tech, featuring our talented analysts team and industry leaders. So in today's episode, I'm joined by our Director of Research, Paul Erickson, and our Senior Contributing Analyst, Eric Sorensen, to chat about the latest insights on streaming services. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, good to see you, Rosey.
Good to be here.
Yeah. So please introduce yourselves to our audience. Tell them about, your role here at Parks Associates and some of the verticals that you cover.
Well, I'll go first. I'm Paul Erickson. I'm Research Director for Entertainment and Consumer Electronics. So much like that nomenclature denotes, I cover almost all things entertainment related to some degree. So streaming services, whether that's audio or video. I cover also I have overview for everything consumer electronics, but mostly those devices that you game on, you listen to music on, you watch video on, and so on. So almost every media-related consumer electronics device, I have responsibility for those areas also. And I'm joined by Eric Sorensen.
Thanks, Paul. I am a senior contributing analyst at Parks Associates. My role is covering the streaming services, the entertainment services, and also focusing on the sports streaming landscape and sports media rights as well. So, been working with Paul now for about 8 months or so, and it's been good.
Great. So you both hosted or moderated a couple of panels from our Future Video session yesterday. It was our fourth session this year, and it focused on personalization and the new video viewers. So I'll let Paul kick things off. Could you tell us a little bit more about some of the things that you covered during the panels that you moderated, and then some of your main takeaways from yesterday's session?
Let's see. So I think Eric, when he gets to his piece, Eric opened up the session and gave some good insights that he can maybe drop a couple data points from in a few minutes.
Sure.
Opened up the day with a few Parks Associates insights and some clues into what's going on in today's streaming market. And then he opened it with his first panel, which we'll get to in a second. But I had the second panel, and I covered mostly content-related concerns and then how the role of content has changed in today's market, especially when it comes to driving engagement, when it comes to driving retention and so on. And so, for context there, essentially it was about looking at content today versus, let's say, 2 or 3 years ago, right, pre-pandemic, and how it's gone from simply having content or giving people as much content as possible to really understanding how best to use content to really keep people in the subscriber fold, to keep them engaged, getting the right content to people, keeping the right content coming to that person, so in that vein, you touch on a number of different, or we touched on a number of different things there, from personalization to getting, specificity, to even making sure that if you are serving content to people, that you have to navigate a lot of different methods in which, or let me back up, a lot of different business models by which that content is reaching people today. Right, it could be a subscription service. It could be an ad-supported, cheaper tier of a subscription service. It could be through an ad-supported VOD service, an AVOD service. It could be a fast service like a Pluto TV or Xumo or what have you. So there's a lot of complexity there in how you're delivering content to the person, and it could be on an on-demand basis like Netflix, or it could be on a linear channel like with Pluto. Mm-hmm. So the ways in which you keep that person engaged, they differ based on how you're delivering that video, right? If it's a self-initiated process, like you're watching through VOD on a Netflix, or you're watching a linear stream and you're skipping between streams through all the channels on, let's say, Pluto, right? Or Xumo or Tubi TV. And there's quite a few challenges there. And so we're seeing now a lot of these technology providers and the content providers look to ways to innovate further, where it's in the future not just going to be about giving somebody a stream, a channel on Pluto. It'll be about individualizing that channel, right? The content within that channel, but personalized, right, to
Yeah.
serve your particular traits. Like maybe, you're watching the cult films channel on Pluto TV, but it knows you like a particular vein of film. It'll serve up a different type of cult film to you, right? So there's a lot of possibilities there to really leverage content to the maximum now. And I thought it was just very interesting because the perspectives we've had or that we've gotten out of that panel, we'll probably be tweeting and quoting them for a couple months to come because they were so diverse, right? So we had somebody from Endeavor Streaming, which Endeavor. I think they used to be WME IMG, the from William Morris and the streaming arm of that, and then they of course now handle the WWE and UFC streaming business. So we had someone from Endeavor. We had Rob Dillon from Straight Arrow News, so someone from the news sector. Uh, we had Paul Pastor from First Light Media, and so we had a lot of different perspectives there, from the content side to the streaming technology provider side to essentially a lot of solution providers. And I I learned a lot from that panel. I don't know that there was a single takeaway, but I think that the broader takeaway is essentially that the industry is now having to do more with the content they have and
Yeah.
get smarter at how they're delivering it to people and making it more personalized, more individual, more tailored. And in this current environment, it's as important to do it as ever, just because it's so incredibly competitive today. And you have, the well, let me back up there. The days of easy subscription growth are over, right? So the pandemic was a period where the streaming industry was very, very, very good place to be. People just couldn't get enough content. They couldn't subscribe enough.
Mhm.
And as we come out of that the pandemic period where people were locked inside, and now people are resuming regular life, they're social, they're out doing things, that
Mhm.
need to be subscribed to the max is not really
Mhm.
there like it was before.
Mhm.
And we have, perhaps some inflation, hitting us now. We have higher price sensitivity hitting us now.
Mhm.
And people are getting more intentional with how they spend their streaming dollar. So the impetus there for streaming services who don't want to see their subscriptions fall, a la Netflix, who we'll get to in a little bit,
Yep.
is to be smarter with the content they're serving, keep people engaged, keep people watching and interested in content that relates to them,
Mhm.
as much as you can serve that content to them within the portfolio of content that you have within your service. And so I think that the entire industry is having to. I mean, it's a high pressure time for the industry, but I think it's driving a lot of innovation in the industry to really do better at how they're serving the customer. So, in a long-winded way, ultimately the consumer wins because the industry has to work harder to keep that consumer, to keep your
Right.
subscription. So that's what I got from that. So
That's 100% true.
so I'll
Yeah.
turn with that huge long setup. I'll turn it over to Eric, and Eric, maybe you can tell the audience a couple insights that you opened up the panel with, right?
Sure.
Coming from our research. I think the one thing the one data point that I've got, talking about competition these days, is that a staggering 25% of internet households, according to the latest Parks Associates research, have 9 or more streaming
I know.
subscriptions, which isn't something we would have rationally considered before. And it
Interesting. Yeah.
seems antithetical to what I just said, where people are, getting pickier with their streaming dollar, and people are perhaps cutting back on subscriptions. And
Yeah.
and those two things are simultaneously true, because people are not spending outrageous amounts for a lot of those other subscriptions because they might be smaller niche services, right? $3 a
Right.
month, $5 a month,
Yeah.
$6 a month. But people are getting more intentional with how they spend, where they're serving their specialty needs. They're very comfortable with going outside of the big three, Netflix, Amazon, Hulu,
Mhm.
to find that specialty service that gives them what they want, taste made or UFC, what have you.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting contrast there, but people are getting more price sensitive, and people are getting they're faced with more choices now, bundling, cross selling, and so on. So,
Right.
what are some of the points that you dove into when you opened up the panel that this helps set up right now for you?
Right. Great. Thanks, Paul.
Yes.
Great
Uh,
intro.
um, no, I think just on that, I think that there's going to be a saturation point on the number of subscriptions that consumers have. I
Mhm.
don't think we're there yet. I think
Right.
we're close, but I don't think we're there yet. I think what we're seeing now is that people are moving beyond the big three and moving into the niche services that help satisfy their content needs. Right. So that stack of 9 or more services. I mean, I will tell you, I don't even know what services I subscribe to right now. Right.
Same.
My kids have services. My wife has some services. I found
Yeah.
out the other day that my wife subscribes to Amazon Prime Video.
Oh,
Have Amazon Prime. Why does she have a separate Prime Video account that I'm paying $4.99 a month for? I don't know. Those are all just the things that you sort of figure out as you start looking at your streaming bill. But
yeah.
yeah, I think yesterday, I thought we had a really good discussion and a really good session. One of the things that I sort of led off with is talking about personalization. We talked about new user experiences because, to Paul's point, the challenge is that streaming service today isn't just about that. Let me sit and watch Netflix. It's
Right.
trying to find a way to engage the consumer beyond just the lean back experience and watch TV. And they have to do that because they are, for Netflix, for example, and I know we'll talk about it in a little bit, but they are reaching a saturation point in the
Yeah.
US, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so we talked about those new features, the feature sets that are providing interactive features or engagement for consumers within the streaming service. So some of those are, we talked a little bit about live streaming and how
Right.
live streaming is coming to fruition for the SVOD services.
Mhm.
And then with that live stream, what are they doing that you couldn't do with traditional TV, right? So think about like Dancing with the Stars or some of the America's Got Talent. You used to have to text in your vote who you wanted off of that. Well, now
Yeah.
you can do that within the live stream, right? You can
Mhm.
create that vote within the live stream because of the broadband connectivity that's being provided. We talked about co-viewing a little bit and how co-viewing created a unique experience during the pandemic for consumers. The height of the pandemic, primarily, that they couldn't go to theaters with their buddies or their friends or their family.
Right.
So a lot of these services started offering co-viewing experiences where, I could watch a movie with my buddy who lives in Seattle. What's interesting about that is, our research sort of found that there was a 25% engagement in our last study in co-viewing. And I think what the challenge is that people would much rather sit with somebody and watch the movie than use a service. It was almost like you used it because it was the only option that you had,
Right.
right? To be able to see that movie or to see that video with, experience it with family and friends. And now that people, to Paul's point, are back engaging and out being social, that trend has sort of moved down. But all of these services are offering this co-viewing experience. The third thing we talked about is how sports betting and wagering are sort of
Mhm.
seeing an uptake, seeing because of, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about sports
Yes.
media rights and sports content moving to streaming. But, as we're seeing that uptake, we're also seeing that there is an engagement there that I personally believe is going to help create new revenue streams for a lot of the services if they can find the right partner to build out and create that interactive betting experience within a live stream. I mean, that's a sports guy's dream to be able to sort of bet and watch a live game at the same time. So, and then
Absolutely.
the third feature that we sort of highlighted is this idea of in-stream merchandising, or personalized ads. And I think we got the audit or our panel really engaged in this topic. So that was one that our panel sort of focused on. But I think from our panel, I felt like we had a pretty diverse panel, a group of panelists on our panel. One of the companies that we had on there was Coeli TV.
Yeah.
And so Coeli TV, what they are is they are a niche service that is sort of serving the Black African American community. And their content is really helping people understand sort of race issues and culture that is relevant to the Black community. And because of the niche of their service, it's also becoming educational content. So one of the things that we didn't get a chance to talk about in our panel that, when I sort of briefed with them, that they shared with me, is that there's a lot of institutions and universities that are now offering their streaming service to students, right, as a way to learn about the cultural challenges of of the Black community.
Sure.
So I thought that's really interesting that,
Very.
their service that they created is not only helping sort of people engage with the culture that is, that they're passionate about, but also educating other folks that aren't of the same race or, of the same culture about what's important to that race. So I found that interesting. We also had another company on there called Together TV
Yes.
for Good. Together TV for Good. They're based in the UK, but if you think about personalization and social interactions sort of coming together, and this is the streaming service that they offer. And what they're doing is they have sort of found that by creating a community of people who are interested in the same subjects, or like, let's say you and I are both interested in cooking,
Sure.
right? There's educational content there that is actually helping people both with their mental and social state around being able to sort of decompress or take stress out of your life by cooking, right?
Yeah.
And what's really interesting about it is they're creating a community that also they're providing support to those people that need those aspirations of gardening or cooking or something that sort of takes you out of the daily pressures of life. So I just find all of that really fascinating, that this is beyond what we were saying at the beginning of this, is the lean back experience of just watching TV, right? I'm engaging with social services or streaming services that are offering me a social engagement that is at the heart of sort of things that I value and care about. Right? And so that niche service is sort of starting to see those uptakes. So that was really, the things that I've sort of learned. The other thing from our panelists, the sentiment from our panelists, is that there's a belief that this personalized ads and being able to purchase things that you see in the stream is coming, but that sort of your average consumer is still skeptical about it a little bit, right? That they believe that, and I asked this question on the panel because I thought it was fascinating, which is, so if I'm watching Stranger Things and somebody's wearing a shirt or an outfit that I think I like and maybe it would look cool on me, can I actually purchase that outfit through the live stream? And the woman who paid said, we believe that technology is coming, which is really fascinating, right? And now I realize there's lots of challenges with that actually happening.
It's been tried before.
Has it?
Say I've been around, not to belie my advanced age, but I've been around TV and TV related market intelligence for probably almost close to 2 decades, and interactive TV has been tried.
Sure.
So not just interactivity like voting or doing something else, but also trying to jump from having that interaction and also being able to purchase, right? Monetize every piece of it, and whether it's an offer on TV. I mean, it's a little bit different now. Like it's still basically the same concept, where the person has to initiate an action to initiate a transaction, and it just happens to be before it was like a shopping channel. Okay, then you could purchase what was happening there, not through phoning in, but by pressing a button, button in the UK, and here now it's contextually different, right? There's some image recognition going on to pick out like what your shirt is from this scene.
You don't want to buy my shirt?
They've embedded all the metadata there so that if you choose to pick a shirt, it knows what shirt it is.
Right.
And it can send you out to the partner website or whatever it needs to do. But I think that it remains to be seen if consumers will actually bother to do this.
Yeah, I know.
And how do you get them to motivate, or how do you motivate them to think that this is not just cool, like a novelty one-off, but a new way of transacting, right? A new way of purchasing clothes, or you just introduce a new way of emulating what you see on TV, because now you want to wear what the person on that. Let's say you're watching Gossip Girl rerun. and you want to wear what Blake Lively was wearing in that
That's so
episode,
funny.
you can do it,
Did that just
right? I mean,
happen? Did he
technically,
just say that? Yeah.
He knows who
I've
he's
watched
talking
some
to.
television in my
All right.
life,
All right.
and it's possible. The thing is, like, well, can you actually? Because I think it takes a bit of social engineering, right, to get people
Yes.
to see that this is a viable dynamic where, okay, I can get that beret that I saw her wearing.
Right.
But I mean, so by social engineering, I mean, do you get people to care? Like,
Sure.
do they think it's like a realistic way of buying clothes
Hmm.
to go through this trouble of doing it through
Right.
the remote? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a challenge for the industry. So I think the technology's there. I
Oh,
think
it's getting there, right?
the challenges aren't really going to be in the enabling technology. The
Right.
challenges are
The
going to be at the
acceptance by the
social level,
consumer.
getting people
Right.
to buy into it.
Yeah.
And luckily, I'm not responsible. None of us are responsible for making that happen.
We'll just sit back and see what happens.
But I'm very curious to watch the progress of it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like if you could buy like LeBron James's shoes just by watching a basketball game, that'd be pretty cool.
Sure. I
Right?
mean,
Like,
yeah.
if I could order my size of LeBron James shoes just because I'm watching a Lakers game, that'd be pretty
Right.
cool.
I mean, Nike will love you saying that. That's for sure.
Nike, if you're listening.
Yeah.
Yes, just
Right.
kidding.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I think we had a really great discussion, and we sort of
Yeah.
ended on to Paul's point that like this technology is coming there for shoppable video content, but that the consumer adoption is going to be the challenge.
Right.
So,
Right.
it was
And
good
I
discussion.
think, yeah, and I'll jump in with some of my takeaways. I think that this is definitely going to be a new level of personalization because it's like going into the psychographics of the consumer and like what are they actually listening to and who is actually watching. I mean, my mom could be on my, account and she's a completely different human than I am, different demographic, different psychographic,
Like on your
different
Netflix
interest.
account, because we might have a problem there when we start talking about Netflix. I'm just
I
kidding.
know. So I thought that was very interesting. And then another thing that I really liked was um, the positive social impact
Yeah.
that some of these streaming services are just like leveling up.
Yep.
So the Quelly TV and the Together TV, just like uniting consumers in one way or another, and I thought that was really interesting. So
Yeah, I think that's that beyond the niche. I mean that's where sort of your desire to feel a part of something comes into
yeah,
play. And that's why
right.
these services are finding success. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to shift things
Okay.
a little bit, shift the conversation into sports. So, Eric,
Okay.
sports guy, I stumbled upon an article this week highlighting that Amazon and Apple are willing to spend big bucks on sports rights, which allegedly keeps getting pricier. So I know there's some additional players in the mix that were mentioned in this article. So could you briefly tell us more about what's going on in the sports / live streaming world, and what does this all mean for consumers and the market, I guess?
Yeah, I mean and again, because I guess I follow the sports side of the business more so than maybe some others, but
Yeah.
I have certainly felt like lately every article or story that I come across is like, oh, so and so is after sports media rights, or the NFL rights are up for bid, or the MLS soccer rights are up for bid. And so as these rights are sort of coming up for bid, there's a couple things that are happening in the industry. One is really as you think about traditional linear TV and how they used to have the rights to all of these big sports media contracts and agreements, right? So like take the NFL, the NBA, college basketball,
Sure.
hockey, whatever that might be. All of these major sports media rights all lived on traditional TV before streaming service, right? Well, we're seeing the decline of traditional TV, right? We're seeing that those subscribers are either cutting the cord or moving to online services.
Right.
Another piece to that is that core demographic that is the sports fan are streamers, right? They're not necessarily tied to their traditional cable provider, the Comcast, Charters, AT&Ts of the world. And so they're online. And so if you are the media rights holders, so say the Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, NHL, whatever that is, you want to reach those consumers where they are and they're online, right? So that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
The challenge is that you also have over here all these streaming services who are saying, hey, we're starting to sort of reach a saturation point in the US. What do we have to do in order to continue to expand and grow and retain consumers? So yeah, the Amazons of the world, the Apple TV Pluses of the world, Netflix even got involved this year when they bid on some Formula One rights for the first time ever that Netflix has bid on sports media rights, which I think really shows, Netflix has been around forever.
Yeah.
And this is the first time that they've ever bid on sports media rights to try to get the live broadcast of Formula One racing. So, I think that speaks to the importance of the sports media rights and how the streaming services are looking for a differentiator by leveraging sports media, right? Sports media is big business. It costs lots of money, but it also drives lots of eyeballs, and that's why the services are looking at them the most. The ESPN Pluses of the world, all of these deals, everybody is bidding on them, and I think the big one that we're going to sort of see that I personally feel like is going to change the industry here is with the NFL. And so the NFL Sunday Ticket has been part of DirecTV. Well, DirecTV, frankly, can no longer afford the NFL, is really the way that this is breaking down. And not in a bad way. It just means we've lost, we don't have X amount of subscribers to make it worth us to pay $3 billion to the NFL for the Sunday Ticket. We're not going to recoup that revenue, right? So I think DirecTV is sort of out of the running. The NFL has said that they plan to take the NFL Sunday Ticket to somebody else, and that somebody else is probably going to be the highest bidder, right? And so where does most of the money lie? And that's with the big tech companies, right?
Right. Yeah.
These deep pockets to be able to bid on these sports rights. Like if you look at Apple TV that just did the MLS deal for like 10 years, they have Major League Baseball now. They didn't before, right? They have Friday Night Baseball on Apple TV Plus. Amazon has Thursday Night Football, the exclusive rights to Thursday Night Football. And so all of these sort of sports media rights and these deals, as the deals become available, two pieces are happening. The audience is online where the streaming services are. The streaming services are looking at it like, we can invest in this. It's going to cost us a ton of money, but the eyeballs are there and we're going to get the advertising revenue to recoup the costs. So I think it's really interesting what happens with the Sunday Ticket, with the NFL Sunday Ticket. I'm not going to make a speculation as to where it goes, but I would say that the top bidders right now are between your traditional broadcasters like ESPN and the big tech companies that are willing to shell out the big bucks to the NFL. So lots going on. I wrote in our monthly update that I feel like live streaming in sports is sort of the next frontier in the SVOD services, because it's funny, like 5 months ago, we wrote that, hey, why is Netflix testing live streaming? Yeah. Hey, why is Disney Plus testing live streaming? What are they trying to build out? And then now all of a sudden they're bidding on live streaming sports.
Yeah. Well, actually, I pulled a stat from, I believe, one of your reports, and it shows that 61% of live streamers or live streaming viewers watch sports. And so sports is, considered to be the most popular type of live stream content. And so I find it interesting that Netflix doesn't offer live sports at all. So how do you think this positions them in the market compared to all of the other people that are bidding,
Yeah, I think they're going to continue to bid on sports rights, right?
You think Netflix is?
What's that?
You think Netflix is going to continue bidding?
Yeah, I think, they had a unique opportunity here with the Formula One deal, because they have a show that it's Formula One. I forget the name of the show. It's F1 Drive to something. I'll have to look it up.
I'll add it to the show notes.
Yeah, exactly. They had a really popular show on Netflix around sort of the behind the scenes of the F1
Mm-hmm.
racing series. I think this live stream concept would have really helped complement that show and sort of help build that audience together. Um, but they lost out, which is interesting. They sort of lost out to ESPN, who had the contract before,
Mm.
right? But you know, there was sort of some talk that F1 was looking at their audience, who also not just streamers, right? They have linear TV, and so Netflix doesn't exist on my cable, right?
Yeah.
So as F1 was sort of thinking about who do I want our rights to live with, we want it to reach as big of an audience as we
Yeah.
possibly can.
Yeah.
And
Both
Netflix
linear
probably just
and
didn't provide that.
yeah.
Right. So it was more than just money for that. So
Makes
it was
sense.
interesting. But I would say yes, they announced that they plan to offer live streaming. They looked at live streaming for like comedy shows
Mm-hmm.
and award shows that they were going to try to offer. And then all of a sudden they came out and bid on sports media rights. So
Interesting.
I think there's a pattern here to sort of say that Netflix is definitely looking to acquire some sports media rights somewhere.
Ooh, we gotta be on the lookout for that. Paul, any comments on this topic?
Well, I've got a lot of comments on Netflix, especially these last couple of weeks, and this last
Yeah.
quarter. So I guess let me before I go on one of my legendary long runs ranting about a subject. You lead me. Like, what aspect do you want to talk about? If I say I've got a lot to say about Netflix, I'll let you corral me into what aspects of Netflix do we perhaps want to cover, especially since
Okay.
with their earnings announcement over the last
Yes.
week and all of the press that's really circulated related to some of the things that have been in their earnings announcement. Um, there's particular aspects that perhaps relate to Parks Associates and some of the things we've looked at. So, Rosey Sera, what is the first thing that you want to cover about Netflix?
Okay, well, let's actually dive into the third and final topic, and then I'll ask you a little bit more about the sports aspect of it.
Okay.
So, I want to talk about Netflix Q2 financial results and their business outlook, which was announced, I believe, on the 19th of July. So earlier this week, and there's so much to unpack. So for those of you that are listening or watching, on Tuesday, Netflix reported that it lost around 970,000 subscribers during the second quarter, a smaller loss than the 2 million that it had projected last quarter. So that's something. But the streaming giant provided guidance for Q3 that it expects to add around 1 million new subscribers. So let's start things off there, and then we'll talk about the other things that Netflix announced during their earnings meeting. So, how do you think that sports streaming plays a role in the you know aspect of them losing subscribers and missing out on potentially gaining an additional 1 million?
I think that it's between all the breathless headlines that have come out over the last week and actually in the quarter before about Netflix losing subscribers, I
Mm-hmm.
think lost in the context, or lost in all of those headlines, is the context that Netflix is a bit of a different animal compared to the rest of the streaming industry, if for nothing other than the fact that they're probably the oldest, largest, and most established in the business, and they're further along in their life cycle as a business than pretty much any other streaming service right now. So they are in a stage of, they're not in a stage of necessarily being new and chasing new markets. They're as penetrated as any services. Uh, and so now they're looking at their stage two, their stage three of their existence,
Mm-hmm.
of their incarnations, if you will. And for me, I look at some of the slowdowns in subscriber growth, and this turnaround now is a natural evolution of the business, right? They've taken this challenge and they are attempting to right the ship, or at least re-engineer the ship for the next phase forward. And if one way I like to look at it is like they've kind of reached almost maximum SVOD, right? Being a subscription business where they charge a full price and then you
Mm-hmm.
either subscribe or you don't, to getting just this subscription VOD service. And now they're looking at ways And not lost upon them is the success of HBO Max and others that have like a cheaper ad-supported tier, and they say, okay, how do we open up? If we've exhausted almost all of the audience that we can get to, or we can get to subscribe to our service as a subscription video on demand service, how do we open up a new base of potential users, a new available market?
Mm-hmm.
Let's start offering an ad-supported tier. Let's start looking at other types of content that we haven't had before, like live content, like
Mm-hmm.
live shows, like sports.
Mm-hmm.
And so they are looking to expand from their existing successful business and to retrench, to re-engineer, to redo their business proposition to do so. So I think that one, they're stating they had losses less than expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's a fact of they've been able to uh, execute well on the back of Stranger Things season 4, and that
Mm-hmm.
they actually thought that they were going to lose 2 million subscribers, or that they were simply managing
Yeah.
expectations to where they were pretty sure it wasn't going to be 2 million subscribers, but let's tell the market two
Yeah.
million so we look better,
Right.
the next quarter. No matter what the reality of that is, I think that's not the real headline out of that. I think the real headline is that they expect to make a gain of 1 million subscribers. Was it 1 million? I think
I think it's
next
right,
quarter. And
Yeah.
to me, whether it turns out to be 1 million, less than 1 million, or more than 1 million, I think that change in tack clearly shows that they are confident that what they're doing is proceeding well
Right.
by their metrics, right? That they feel that um, even though, for example, the measures that you're introducing to curb password sharing, or at least to better monetize shared passwords, that's not going to hit till next year, probably, right? Their
Mm-hmm.
ad-supported tier is probably not going to hit until next year.
2023, they said.
In fact, not
Yeah.
probably. They stated it's
Yeah.
not going to happen until next year.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they're very confident that even without these things materially factoring into the business, that they're going to do well next quarter. So I think that speaks to clearly what's happening there. That they are looking at this stage in their existence, that subscriber slowdown, not just as a bump in the road, but it's been an opportunity for them to reinvent themselves for this next stage of their existence. And I think sports is part of that, right? Live, if we get away from it being sports and we just look at live
sports.
content being
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
X factor content wise, where they go from being, okay, they've done as well as anybody could do
Right.
as a subscription video business, right? They're
I mean, who
global.
doesn't have Netflix?
Exactly. So how many more markets can they get into, right? And especially like if you look at some of the things that happened, why they lost so many subscribers the previous quarter.
Mm-hmm.
They wrote off a lot of subscriptions in Russia because of the war. How many other major streamers have that kind of international exposure to even the
Right.
Ukraine Russia war, right?
Yeah.
Netflix, because
Yeah.
they're so well penetrated. So now if they look,
Yeah.
okay, we've maxed out the S5 business, or we've done it to death, right? We are the S5 business.
Yeah.
Now let's also get into other areas of delivery content, because they're an entertainment business, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. At the end of the
they're
day.
owning that now, from subscription video to gaming, right?
Right.
However gaming goes, but then live.
Yeah.
And then that's performances, that's sports,
Right.
that's anything else that you can do on a live basis. Maybe one day it'll be betting too. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
You never
probably
know.
going to be the domain of Fubo and other sports-centric properties.
Right.
So I look at sports as being another way in which they feel, provided that they don't just go out and acquire randomly sports rights to different leagues,
Sure.
but that it fits in, like you were alluding to, with veins of content that
Right.
they have. F1,
Yeah.
Premier League soccer, right? They have a Ronaldo series. They have
Yeah.
some other stuff there that they can link together. I think that it's just a source of new growth and a new version of Netflix 2023, 2024, and beyond.
Yeah. Love that answer. That was great.
You gonna talk
Well,
about password sharing too?
I
or no?
can.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. That's my follow-up question.
That's
Those
a lot. That's a lot. I think that they are. I think the industry benefits from Netflix taking this on right now, because
Watch and see.
Netflix has got the most. They're the biggest. They have the largest number of markets to experiment on. They arguably have as much capital as anybody to bloody their noses on experimenting with how best to do this.
right.
And keep in mind that password sharing, this is not a problem that's just purely Netflix, right? The whole industry deals with this.
Yeah.
And the whole industry has been so focused on growing subscribers as fast as possible that they've never really tried to tackle this for fear of curbing their own subscription growth by alienating their customers by trying to
Mhm.
chase those that are sharing passwords with, their family,
Family
their friends,
members.
etc.
Yeah.
And this is certainly a different animal than commercial piracy, or that same password or credential is being used to sell service to hundreds of thousands of
Right.
households.
Right.
So I think password sharing is it's a tricky beast to handle because you want to try and get some extra revenue out of those households without alienating that customer relationship, right? So you
Yes.
you increase the ARPU, the revenue per
Yep.
household, and you want to do it in a way that's sensitive because it may be a brother, a father, a relative, a close friend that just happens to not. There's still a relationship to that customer. They're not in the same household.
I got
Right.
a stat for you.
All right,
You
give
ready
me the
for this?
stat.
Listen, okay.
We love
Go
Parks
for it.
Associate stats
Well,
on this podcast.
It's more about what Netflix said. Ready for
Okay.
this? All right. So executives estimate that Netflix is being shared by over 100 million additional viewers outside of the paying household.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
think about it. Put that in terms of revenue, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Even if it's
Right.
99 cents or $1, right? 100
Yeah,
million
game
That's what
changer.
Netflix says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they say 30 million of those are in the U.S. and Canada.
Yeah.
That represents billions of dollars in revenue loss. All right,
Beyond.
sorry, I just wanted to.
No, that's great. I'm
Yeah,
glad that you shared that.
And I
Yeah.
think we talked about this the other day that they're experimenting in other markets,
Right.
especially a lot of these the Latin American markets where the cost varies. I think from obviously translated into dollars from like $1.70 for that extra household or shared
Yeah.
household
Yeah.
plan
Yeah.
to $2.99 I think in US dollars, and so
Yeah.
I don't know that that's going to be the price that they actually try here in the US because it's still in a trial phase, and what Latin America can afford or what they feel is a good price to charge in Latin America, that could be $2.99 there, it could be $4.99 here, right? Since
Right.
obviously our cost of living is higher, our standard of living is higher, but I think that the impetus is there for them to eventually try and extract an additional revenue
Yeah.
stream from this, to tighten up their finances.
Mhm.
And tightening up finances is something the entire streaming industry needs to do because almost no one is actually making
Nobody's-
money. That's almost a dirty thing to say, but
Don't tell me.
yes, not spreadsheet money, but actually in the
Actual
black.
money, yes.
Almost no one is making money, and so everyone at some point or another has to tighten up their finances, and whether that's reducing costs,
Mhm.
increasing revenues, increasing profit margins, everybody has to do it. Netflix is right now the most aggressive at trying to do it by tackling these sticky issues like password sharing. The other thing, of course, that they're doing besides password sharing is looking at their ad-supported tier, which is also another thing that they see that on that one. They're not necessarily an initiator there; they're almost a follower because you see
Disney Plus,
Peacock, Disney. Disney obviously is going after
Hulu.
support
Yeah.
also. They see how well HBO Max is doing thanks to the ad-supported tier, and so potentially that is a gigantic additional market. Not just the people that are sharing passwords, but those people that might be open to a half-price Netflix, right, with
Yeah.
ads, and then so it's not just the revenue from those people that are paying for that half-price subscription; it's the advertising
Ad
revenue, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
that ending ARPU, that net,
Yeah.
like revenue that we're getting per set of eyeballs that's watching, it
Mhm.
could be just as high as what they're getting from the full price subscriber, but more accurately, it sustains their growth into even more households than they could have reached before because now they're reaching those people that couldn't afford or simply weren't
Right.
willing to pay full price.
Yeah.
So I think that Netflix has plenty of legs in front of it.
Mhm.
And anything talking about the death of Netflix or the death of SVOD, it's the death of the old Netflix, right?
I found
The death
Right.
a Park stat. Ready?
of-
Go
okay.
for it.
Associate stat. 92% of broadband households have Netflix, right? 92% of broadband households that have Netflix also use at least one other SVOD service.
Yeah.
So, like, basically saying that everybody has Netflix, but they also have other
Period.
subscription
Yes.
services. So the competition is there.
Right.
For them,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, they have to live in a competitive market now, just like everyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you remember, like, I don't know, maybe 3 months ago or so, Netflix came out and said that the competition is real, or it's
Yeah.
like we're in the face of competition.
Unexpected competitive challenges.
Yes.
I forget what the
Never
corporate speak
before
was
have they
around
ever
that.
said that
Yes.
there's competition or that we have challenges with competition. So,
Right.
look, I agree with Paul. Netflix isn't dying, right? Netflix isn't going to go away anytime soon. I think reality is there's saturation in the U.S. and the revenue streams are still going to come in, but how do you diversify that revenue streams and think of new ways to do it?
Yep.
Exactly.
They're simply reinventing themselves.
Yeah.
And they're not going anywhere. They're just part of now a very diverse mix of choices that people have.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they have now various avenues where they can not only just retain their current consumers, but also acquire new ones. So lots going on in the Netflix world and the OTT/streaming services world. It's been a wonderful conversation. We're getting towards the end of the episode now, now that we've been talking for however long, and we can talk for days.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't put both of us together.
Yeah.
It's way too
No, I
long.
love it. This is a great conversation.
You can always cut for content. You can always edit it.
Okay, so now that we're approaching the end, I'll let you guys plug yourselves, tell our audience, what you have going on research-wise, and where they can reach you on social media. I'll let Eric go first. Since
Me first.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm pretty stoked, pretty excited about this report that I'm working on, which is it's coming out in the fall. It's going to be on OTT sports services and strategies for growth. So really, we're covering the entire landscape of what we talked about earlier, the streaming media space, sports media rights, what the future holds, and how streaming services are looking at this for growth. So the other place you can find what I do here at Parks is we do a monthly update. It's the OTT monthly update. You can find that on the website. You can find that within the Parks Associates content. And then if you want to find me, you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can find me on Twitter. My Twitter is it is Eric S at Parks Associates.
Perfect. I'll make sure to add it to the show notes too, so people can easily click through and follow you. Thank you for sharing.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rosey. This was a lot of fun.
Of course. All right, Paul.
All right, my plug. Let's see. So I've, as I mentioned, I cover so much. I won't say all things, but a lot of stuff relating to entertainment and consumer electronics. And then this particular point in time, this like couple weeks to month here, I'll be working on releasing and then also doing a lot of the post-release tweeting and press cycle for my latest quantified consumer streaming video products report. And it's something that we put out a version of pretty much every year. And that's going to be looking at the latest Parks Associates consumer survey data from last quarter for what people are buying and how they're buying and why when it comes to streaming devices and sticks, smart TVs, other devices that they're consuming content on, and looking at how those are being used to consume traditional pay TV, streaming, and not just streaming, but looking at SVOD versus AVOD versus FAST and everything else. So,
are you going to cover dongles?
Yes, streaming devices, aka dongles. We like to call them streaming media players at Parks. Dongles also, but we call them SMPs, so we sound very business wise.
Yes.
Yes, we cover all the devices, the devices there that hook up to your TV, or that are your TV that you can watch video on. And so very interested because I think at Parks, we've looked at how people have really gone from, let's say a few years back, the TV was one of a mix of devices that you consumed content on. Now it's the device. Because I think we saw last quarter was 56% of U.S. households have a smart TV, and I think 55% use it as their preferred device to watch streaming video on.
Yeah.
So it is now the centerpiece, like the media consumption centerpiece of the connected household. And we see a lot of things coalescing around that, right? Like the advertising industry is like just pouncing on the smart TV as the way to really drive targeted advertising now. And your traditional advertising metrics and viewership metrics companies like Nielsen are faced with a barrage of challenges from
Yeah.
all these other people that are now selling direct, like glass level data, like your Roku's and your Vizios and your LGs that are selling data on like all the stuff that people are consuming on the TV, whether that's ads, whether that's TV, whether that's streaming, or whether that's gaming, right? From a connected
Yeah.
PlayStation 4. They have insight into all of that consumption that's going on. So you see huge activity around the smart TV. And, we delve into at least the TV side of that activity in our quantified consumer streaming video products report. So that's what I've got, and my Twitter is Paul Erickson AV, and of course you can find me on LinkedIn as well. And yeah, that's my bit. And happy to be
Amazing.
here again, and glad that you got plenty of content from Eric and myself. I'm sure it'll keep you
I mean,
busy in the editing bay
I was
to
gonna
cut it
say,
down.
if she does an hour podcast, no one's gonna listen to us talk for an hour.
Yeah,
Of
you can
course
chop
they
it up
do.
into like 5
Yeah,
episodes.
part one, part two,
Yeah,
volume
sound
one,
bites.
volume
I have 100 sound bites.
no, you guys are wonderful, and it just passionate about what you do and what you cover, and that's a beautiful thing. I appreciate you joining today's episode. I'm going to do my quick outro, but I'll make sure to have all of your upcoming releases on the show notes and all of your social media handles as well. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Rosie.
All
Thanks for
right.
having us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Connected consumers, if you're listening on a podcast platform, please make sure to subscribe and submit a review. For those of that are watching us on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button, and feel free to comment about what topics you'd like to hear next and topics that you're interested in. Thank you, gentlemen, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Take care.